The specter of genocide hangs heavy over the 21st century, but what exactly constitutes genocide? The 1948 United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide provides a legal definition. Genocide, according to the convention, is not merely about killing. It is about the intent to destroy. This destruction targets a specific group defined by nationality, ethnicity, race, or religion. The convention outlines 5 specific acts that, when committed with this intent, constitute genocide. The first act is killing members of the group. The second act involves causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. The third act is deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about the group's physical destruction. The fourth act is imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. The fifth and final act is forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, accusations of genocide have been leveled against the invading forces. Ukraine and its allies point to a systematic campaign of violence and oppression targeting Ukrainian civilians. These actions, they argue, are not merely the consequence of war but rather a deliberate strategy to eliminate Ukrainian identity and statehood. The evidence, while still emerging, is compelling and demands the world's attention. International organizations, human rights groups, and legal experts are meticulously documenting the alleged crimes. At the heart of Ukraine's accusations are claims of mass civilian killings. The names of towns like Bucha, Irpin, and Mariupol have become synonymous with barbarity. Images of bodies lying in the streets, some with hands bound, others bearing signs of torture, have shocked the world. Further fueling these accusations are the reported deportations of Ukrainian children to Russia. Thousands of children separated from their families are allegedly being forcibly relocated and placed in Russian homes or institutions. The images emerging from Ukraine are hauntingly familiar: mass graves, bodies left to decompose in the streets, and the shattered remnants of civilian lives. The sheer scale of the alleged atrocities is staggering, with reports of summary executions, torture, and indiscriminate shelling of civilian areas. In the town of Bucha, located just outside Kiev, the withdrawal of Russian forces in April 2022 revealed a scene of unimaginable horror. Hundreds of civilian bodies, many with their hands bound and showing signs of torture, were discovered scattered throughout the town. Eyewitness accounts spoke of Russian soldiers targeting unarmed civilians, executing them at close range. Similar atrocities have been reported in other liberated towns and cities. In Irpin, another suburb of Kyiv, mass graves were discovered containing the bodies of civilians, including women and children. The city of Mariupol, subjected to a brutal siege by Russian forces, has become a symbol of the indiscriminate violence inflicted upon Ukrainian civilians. Satellite imagery has captured the emergence of mass graves in areas under Russian occupation. Among the most chilling accusations leveled against Russia is the systematic deportation of Ukrainian children. This forced relocation, often under the guise of evacuation or humanitarian aid, has separated thousands of children from their families and homeland. Reports suggest that Ukrainian children, some as young as 4 years old, are being taken from orphanages, boarding schools, and even directly from their parents. They are then transported to Russia, often to remote regions where they are placed in foster homes, institutions, or given up for adoption by Russian families. By separating Ukrainian children from their culture and identity, Russia aims to erase their Ukrainian heritage and raise them as Russian citizens. This practice, as defined by the 1948 Genocide Convention, constitutes a key act of genocide. The psychological impact on these children is profound. They are forced to adapt to a new language, culture, and often a new identity. Many are cut off from any contact with their families and loved ones back in Ukraine. The international community has condemned these deportations as a violation of international law and a crime against humanity. Beyond the physical violence, a more insidious form of destruction is underway in Ukraine: the systematic eradication of Ukrainian culture and identity. This assault takes many forms, from the demolition of historical monuments and religious sites to the suppression of the Ukrainian language and the rewriting of history books. Russian state-controlled media plays a key role in this campaign, disseminating propaganda that dehumanizes Ukrainians and denies their right to exist as a distinct nation. Ukrainians are often portrayed as Nazis or fascists, a narrative used to justify the invasion and fuel hatred towards them. The destruction of cultural heritage is another chilling aspect of this cultural erasure. Libraries, museums, theaters, and historical sites have been bombed and looted, erasing centuries of Ukrainian history and artistic expression. The destruction of the Mariupol Drama Theater, where hundreds of civilians were sheltering, stands as a stark symbol of this cultural vandalism. In occupied territories, Russian authorities have imposed the Russian language in schools and government institutions. Ukrainian teachers are being replaced and Ukrainian books and media are being censored. This systematic assault on Ukrainian culture and identity is not merely collateral damage of war. While the world recoils from the horrors unfolding in Ukraine, Russia offers a starkly different narrative. Moscow vehemently denies allegations of genocide, instead framing its actions as a special military operation aimed at denazifying and demilitarizing Ukraine. This narrative, disseminated through state-controlled media, seeks to justify the invasion and deflect accusations of war crimes. Central to Russia's counterclaims is the situation in the Donbas region of eastern Ukraine. Since 2014, Russian-backed separatists have been engaged in a conflict with Ukrainian forces in this region, resulting in thousands of civilian casualties. Russia accuses Ukraine of committing genocide against Russian-speaking populations in Donbas, citing alleged atrocities and discrimination. Moscow further alleges that Ukraine's government is controlled by neo-Nazis who pose a threat to Russia's security. This claim, widely disputed by international observers, serves to paint Ukraine as the aggressor and Russia as acting in self-defense. By invoking the specter of Nazism, Russia attempts to draw parallels to World War II and garner support for its actions. Russia also accuses Ukraine of suppressing Russian language and culture within its borders. The ongoing conflict in the Donbas region of eastern Ukraine has become a focal point in the accusations and counter-accusations of genocide. Russia points to this conflict as justification for its invasion, claiming it is protecting Russian speakers from Ukrainian aggression. However, a closer examination of the Donbas conflict reveals a more complex and troubling reality. The conflict erupted in 2014 following Russia's annexation of Crimea, another Ukrainian territory with a significant Russian-speaking population. Armed separatists, backed by Russian troops and equipment, seized control of parts of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, declaring independence from Ukraine. While Russia initially denied its involvement, overwhelming evidence has since emerged of its direct military support for the separatists. International observers have documented the presence of Russian troops, tanks, and heavy weaponry in the Donbas region. The conflict in Donbas has had a devastating impact on the civilian population. Thousands have been killed and millions have been displaced from their homes. Both sides have been accused of human rights abuses, including indiscriminate shelling of civilian areas and extrajudicial killings. The gravity of the allegations surrounding the Russia-Ukraine conflict has prompted calls for accountability and justice. International law, while imperfect, provides a framework for holding perpetrators of genocide accountable for their crimes. The International Criminal Court, established in 2002, is the world's permanent court for prosecuting individuals for genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the crime of aggression. While Ukraine is not a member state of the ICC, it has accepted the court's jurisdiction for crimes committed on its territory since 2014. The ICC prosecutor, Karim Khan, has opened an investigation into the situation in Ukraine, stating that there is a reasonable basis to believe that both war crimes and crimes against humanity have been committed. Another avenue for seeking justice is through universal jurisdiction, which allows national courts to prosecute individuals for genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes regardless of where the crimes were committed or the nationality of the perpetrators. Several countries, including Germany and Poland, have launched their own investigations into alleged war crimes in Ukraine under this principle. The pursuit of justice for the victims of the Russia-Ukraine conflict will be a long and arduous process. The question of whether Russia's actions in Ukraine constitute genocide is complex and requires meticulous investigation and legal scrutiny. While the evidence of widespread atrocities and human rights abuses is undeniable, proving genocidal intent, a key element of the crime of genocide, presents significant challenges. Genocidal intent refers to the specific intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. Proving genocidal intent requires examining a range of evidence including official statements, military orders, internal documents, and the patterns of violence themselves. The International Criminal Court, tasked with prosecuting genocide, sets a high bar for proof. Prosecutors must demonstrate beyond a reasonable doubt that the accused possessed the specific intent to destroy the targeted group. While the quest for accountability for the atrocities in Ukraine is complex and challenging, it is a moral imperative. The international community must remain steadfast in its pursuit of justice, documenting crimes, gathering evidence, and holding perpetrators accountable.